Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
This is KRWG, TV, radio, online, news that matters. Now, across the Mesilla Valley and the borderland, the stories that shape our community. From the KRWG Broadcast Center at New Mexico State University, this is Newsmakers.
Thanks for joining us on this special edition of Newsmakers. I'm Fred Martino. Today we focus on the work of local artist Haydee Alonso. The city of El Paso provided a grant for her project, Make America Great Again, Doors Not Walls. The reference to President Donald Trump's campaign slogan with a very clear addition. The exhibit's focus on the contributions and struggles of immigrants. Full disclosure, one video in the project featured former KRWG reporter Simon Thompson, who returned to Australia when his visa was not renewed.
Working as a reporter, as a temporary worker in the US, I had a pretty rich experience. I was working with these school kids, working in this broadcast department, training the next generation of journalists to how to be reporters and cover their region and understand their voice and value. I wasn't expecting my visa denial to happen. It's a very intricate and complicated process living on a temporary work visa in the US. There's a lot of unknowns, there's a lot of complexities, a lot of kind of dense law. I'm currently in Juarez while I kind of slowly coordinate getting my things out of the house I was renting, saying goodbye to friends, because I can't really go back into the US without complicating. I'm just trying to make sure I'm respecting the immigration laws. It just felt really cool to be part of an American community and kind of have something to contribute and kind of have a nice little place, and I will remember that for a long time.
Former KRWG reporter Simon Thompson there, of course, being interviewed by my guest today, Haydee Alonso. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's good to have you here. So to start off with, tell me about how you came across Simon's story and how you decided to include him in your project.
Right, so I'm part of a committee in El Paso. It's called the Detained Migrant Solidarity Committee. And during my time in that committee, they were the ones that really helped me branch out to the specific people I interviewed and visited and heard their experiences. And most of them were, I guess, the most common cases. And Simon's case really stood out because he was really part of the community. He was established. He was someone that was affected by the new immigration laws, but in a very distinct way than the others were. So one of the founders of the committee, Alan Dicker, was the one that suggested I contact Simon, and he was very helpful. He was very willing, and we met a couple times. We became, friends, and it was just a shame how everything happened to him and how unexpectedly it happened. So yes, I decided to have him as part of the documentaries that I did, which I did 3. Just because his case is just so distinct from all the others.
Yeah, and of course you interviewed him in Juarez, where he was living before going back to Australia. It was part of his incredible contribution to our newsroom was this focus on the entire border region, including Mexico. I imagine that that's something you must have appreciated growing up here and seeing that.
Right. Yeah, I'm a border baby. I called myself a border baby. And I actually didn't really realize how lucky we all are living in the border until I left and studied internationally. And yes, so it's kind of, this wedge between two cultures, which is really beautiful and very kind of confusing when you're a child, but really molds you into, I don't know, this being that you become.
It makes this such a wonderful and interesting place to live.
Right.
I want to move on to the project as a whole and how this came together, when you decided to do this, and then how you ended up getting funding for this and,
Right.
and making this happen.
Right. So I was living. I lived 5 years out of the border region. So I came back, and I really wanted to incorporate myself into the community. And this is barely when Donald Trump was running for president. So there was a lot of talk of immigration and the border wall and all these things. So I was just tired of complaining and not really taking action. So in my way to kind of put my little grain of sand and help and incorporate myself into the community was through this project, which I titled "Make America Great Again: Doors Not Walls" before Trump even won. So I applied, and so I applied around April, and he won, I think, November.
Yes.
And so that's how that came to be, and yes, that's why I decided, and that's my way of, I guess, incorporating myself into the community and voicing. Very important that I, raise awareness to this issue and situation.
And tell me about getting funding from El Paso. I thought this was a very interesting aspect of
Right.
this amazing achievement doing this project, because we don't usually think about local governments funding projects that could generate controversy,
Right.
particularly political controversy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I actually had a couple meetings during the project, and they were not scared, but they were kind of, just making sure I did things correctly. And so the grant is through the Museum of Cultural Affairs Department in El Paso, and it's called Artist Incubator Grant. And to my understanding, I believe that's the only grant that funds individual artists in the state of Texas. So we're very, very lucky to have that in El Paso. It's very competitive, and so they do ask for letters of recommendation. And I guess what's most important about it is that they want the community to be involved in whatever way possible. So the way that I involve the community is through art workshops.
And this is so interesting to me because this takes really people to champion your work. What do you want to say to them that they really? I think there was some bravery involved here to say, we're going to fund this work,
Right.
even though not everyone may be happy about that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes. And well, I was covered by Now This, my project, and you read a bunch of the comments, and a lot of them were, I can't believe our government is funding this, and it was a brave move, one that I honestly didn't think I was gonna get funding for because of so controversial that it is. My personal work, so I'm a jeweler. That's what I do. I do a little bit of photography and a little bit of video and performance art. But my work has always been about being from the border area, borders, literal and figurative borders. And I just wanted to connect that in a way that was relevant to our times now. Hence my project, Make America Great Again.
Yeah, and let's talk about the title. So a very
Mm-hmm.
political name for the project.
Right.
Tell me about the decision to incorporate now President Trump's campaign slogan into your name for your project with a very important addition.
Right.
Doors, not walls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was actually back and forth. I was going back and forth a lot with the title. It was either just going to be MAGA, or Doors Not Walls, or Make America Great Again, but I think he copywrote Make America Great Again, and it's satirical. I feel that our country is known for its open doors and immigration and immigrants, and that we're all entrepreneurs and we're here to enrich the community. This is what I feel the United States is, and he started, I guess, tainting that almost in a way. And so I just felt it was important that Make America Great Again, you know, I think it's a name that we all, it's a title that we all recognize, we all know who uses it, where it comes from, when it started being used, and add doors, not walls, you know, because I feel a lot of us still that live in the United States, that are born and raised here, we still see the United States as a country that opens our doors to immigrants and to migrants and people wanting to establish themselves and ask for refuge here. And that's why I chose the title. You know.
Okay, and while the exhibit display has ended, the website, Make America Great Again, Doors Not Walls, continues. Folks can see all of the videos online. They can comment, they can share in this process. I want to talk, though, too, about the exhibit that was on display. You featured art by first-generation Americans. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I worked with La Mujer Obrera in El Paso, and they have, it's women, no, it's all run by women. And so the children, the first immigration Americans, I decided it would be interesting for them to do workshops. And they did workshops from talking about their culture and their heritage and just their definition of what it means to be in the border. A lot of them, for example, their father lives in Juarez and they have to cross over because their father can't cross. And it was just very interesting for children that were, I think maybe the oldest one was maybe 8 years old, and just to see the way that they interpret this lifestyle. That's why I decided to work with them, and it was for a month, and I went once a week, I went once a week, and it was around maybe 15 children.
That's amazing. So you also feature art from ICE detainees. Tell me about that.
Correct. Yeah, they were from Otero County. They're from Otero County. I was there for 2 months, and I went every Saturday morning. Only women, so they're no longer housed there. They were actually moved to another detention center, so I'm not currently there at the moment. And the classes varied from 9 people to 20, and it was mostly people from Mid and South America. And also, again, I decided to incorporate them, and also it was work regarding their culture and their heritage, to remember where they come from and kind of forget for a second their situation, because a lot of them actually told me that they didn't know that if they asked for refuge they were going to be put in a detention center. No, they're basically prisons, because I had to receive an 8-hour orientation and background check, and these particular ICE detainees that were in Otero County, they're housed with state and federal prisoners. So, you know, they say that they're not in prison, but still when you go visit them, there's a glass and there's a phone, and they're not just detained.
So important for people to understand. I'm
Right.
talking today with local artist Haydee Alonso. Her project, Make America Great Again, Doors Not Walls, received a grant from the city of El Paso. Now another video from the project featuring immigration lawyers.
Immigration detention isn't supposed to be punitive. That's what the law says, and that's what the Supreme Court has said. The reality is that detention is used punitively all over the country, particularly here in El Paso.
My personal experience with the immigration system has been that it's completely arbitrary. Unlike other areas of law, practicing immigration law is difficult because there's no certainty in anything.
I've been practicing now as an immigration attorney for 4 years now. And I've been representing people in detention for close to 3 years. I can only speak to what has been relayed to me by my clients. And there's definitely very questionable things happening in the detention centers in the surrounding area.
Under the Trump administration, the policy has shifted to a place where anybody who comes to the United States legally, doesn't come here illegally, comes here legally asking for asylum, comes to the bridge and says, somebody's trying to kill me, please help me, that person will be in detention until the day that their case is completed. And those asylum cases can take months, some of them can take years. There are people who are sitting in detention who have never committed a crime, who have never done anything wrong, who are people just like you and me, and they've been in prison for 1.5 to 2 years, all because somebody tried to kill them and they are asking to survive.
Immigration law is difficult because there's no certainty in anything, and it's arbitrary in the sense that your experience as an attorney, as someone in the system, will change depending on the judge. A system that we have right now that is somewhat inhumane. Even when people are trying to do the right thing, it leads to some pretty awful outcomes.
This is going to illustrate, I think in a very bipartisan way, the need for immigration reform. Because I don't think as a nation we want to deport someone who's been here for 20 years with no crime on their record whatsoever, who has raised upstanding citizen kids. I don't think anybody wants to do that. So I think that potentially could catapult for immigration reform.
So the issue of how we treat immigrants is also a big part of your project. And I should mention that on the website, you ask people when they experience this work that they get involved, that they suggest policy solutions. Tell me about that.
Right, so there are, I feel, different ways to get involved, not just so much visiting people in detention, but for example, a lot of people have donated art materials for the art workshop. It was funded by the city of El Paso, but still a lot of the community really got together and helped me with donating materials. I also sometimes need volunteers inside the detention center to give workshops. We can also contact the Detained Migrant Solidarity Committee. We meet once a month. Every first Wednesday we do a little potluck and we talk about what it is, what next steps that we need to take during this month, or what events. We partner with the Border Network a lot. And so these are certain ways that people can participate or help raise awareness with the issue.
You mentioned this earlier in our conversation today, that you were born in this region, and I want to read something from your website on the project, that you, being born in the border, are wedged between no man's land and has been forced to alternate between cultures and customs in an infinite attempt to connect, being in this border region of El Paso and Juarez. Mm-hmm. Expand on that for me and tell me a little bit about your background and growing up essentially between two countries and two cultures.
Right. So I lived all my life in Juarez, but I was born in the United States. My extracurricular activities were in Juarez, but I studied in El Paso. So it was kind of very like a planned schedule for me. You wake up and I saw cartoons in Spanish, and then I crossed a bridge, which at a young age I didn't realize it was a bridge connecting two countries. For me, it was just a bridge that connected my home to my school. I got to the school and it was only English, and then I would come back and I would do my extracurricular. So it was a very, I experienced two cultures in a very timed fashion when I was younger. And like I said, I didn't really experience, or I didn't really realize that this is what my life was until I left and studied internationally. And I remember I met, this person from Thailand, and he said, so wait a minute, so you have breakfast in Mexico and you have lunch in the United States? And I'm like, yes, it's that close. And so I speak fluent, my first language is Spanish. I speak fluent Spanish. I know how to read, write it. I speak fluent English as well, and which is so beautiful about being in the border area. Not just so much the language part, but the culture part. You know, I go to Thanksgiving with my father's side of the family, but then again I celebrate Dia de los Muertos with the Mexican side. So we're very rich, you know, and we're very, very lucky to be in this border area. And I feel people don't realize this, that have not left, you know, that have just stayed here. They're in this bubble, and they call this like it's a little ranch and there's nothing to do. But we are extremely, extremely lucky to live in this area.
Tell me what this has been like over the last year. I cannot imagine how difficult it must be sometimes growing up here and then working on this project, because for many of us who aren't as closely connected, this issue of immigration and what we're seeing in terms of our political climate is incredibly difficult.
Right. Actually, I know this seems like it's a very complicated and a very large topic, and I feel a lot of people are sometimes intimidated by it and they don't want to ask questions. But you see, the thing is that I was very much in the dark also until last April. You know, this people being detained in detention centers has been happening before Trump. And it's something that I didn't know then, and I was shocked that I didn't know that people were detained. I don't give legal aid. I don't know how the immigration court system works in its entirety. I'm just here to voice. I'm here as a voice for people that cannot voice them because they are in detention centers. And everybody can do that too. You don't need to be be in the immigration system. You don't need to be in legal aid. Anybody can do this. And so this is why I do it, to raise awareness, and I offer solidarity to people that are detained, and I visit them. I visit them once a week, to certain people that reach out to the committee. But it's such a complicated mess right now, the immigration system, and you have to constantly be reading the news to kind of see what is happening and who's been banned and who has not been banned. And but it's not, I feel people shouldn't be scared or shouldn't feel intimidated to start this conversation.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you've lived elsewhere, and we should mention that you have a master's degree from the Royal College of Art in London. Tell me about studying in London, living elsewhere, India and France, Estonia, and what that's meant for you personally and then also professionally, what it's brought to your work, whether it be in this project or others.
Mm-hmm. Well, my work is a lot about different cultures and relationships between people, and how sometimes our environment kind of plays a very big role in that. And I felt it really strongly in England, actually, in London, because me growing up with a Mexican family and a large Mexican family, we're very touchy. We're very, we like to hug people, and we talk a lot. And the British are much more calm and much more, they are not so touchy as us. So that for me, and there were a lot of Asians also in my program at the Royal College of Art, and they kind of didn't really like the touching part so much. So that does play a very, very big role into my work. And also my experience in India, I was there for 5 months. I was living in a Buddhist monastery and with monks that are from Burma. So I was teaching them English, and they taught me a little bit of Buddhism. And there were a lot of mannerisms that I didn't know I shouldn't do, because they, like for example, I would sit down and the soles of my feet were facing them, and they told me I shouldn't do that because that's a sign of disrespect. So all of these different experiences that I've had internationally have really shaped me, not as an individual, but as an artist as well. And also, for example, in Estonia, not a lot of people speak English there, and going to the supermarket and buying milk was just like an ordeal, and I ended up buying yogurt half the time.
A final point that I want to give you a chance in our last minute here to make is your thoughts on the importance of this in our educational system, to have international experiences for young people.
Yes, I feel it's extremely, extremely important. I started traveling at a young age, and I feel those of us that have not traveled or just travel maybe within the United States, we're kind of in this bubble, you know, and we feel that sometimes we are the center of attention, or sometimes, you know, this is the way that we do it, hence everybody probably does it the same. And, you know, the thing is that it is not. And when I went to India, for example, I started when I got back, my showers were shorter. And I started recycling, because the issue with trash in India, they don't have anywhere to put it, so they burn it. They burn trash. So it's all these different experiences that I've had really opened my eyes to the importance of traveling and the importance of experience different cultures and knowing different people and having conversations with these people.
And certainly it shows in the work. And thank you so much for sharing this work with us.
Of course. Yeah,
really
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Local artist Haydee Alonso. That is our time for this week. Join us this week on KRWG Radio. Every weekday, it's Morning Edition from 5 to 9, Fresh Air at 11, followed by Here and Now, noon to 2, and All Things Considered 4 to 7. KRWG News, always online at krwg.org, and we'd love to hear from you. Email us with your story ideas and video submissions at feedback@nmsu.edu. For all of us at KRWG News, I'm Fred Martino. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on Newsmakers.